reason I called it survival mode was my story got me thinking about my own life. And, I'll share openly that, my childhood had a lot of trauma, a lot. And I didn't realize how much the trauma over my life really impacted me. Welcome to episode 1 of Survival Mode with Todd Angelucci. This is the first episode of the podcast, and the reason about the podcast that was super inspiring to me was I've listened to a bunch of podcasts, and I found so much value in learning about certain things, and more importantly, interviews from experts in various fields. And the reason I called it survival mode was my story. My story is roughly about a year ago. I relatively fit guy, pretty fit actually, health coach, working with helping people. Out of nowhere, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I actually had some very vague symptoms that brought me, to the doctor. I was just like, maybe I should get this checked out a little bit. And he was going to do a couple tests. And he said, if you have any more symptoms or anything comes up, you should probably go to the ER. And one of my big things that I like to do is I do mixed martial arts. I actually do Krav Maga. And I was doing some training for it. I actually live on a lake, and I was running around the lake, and I came back and my hand felt a little weird. And so I decided, I said, let me run to the local hospital and have them check me out. So I wound up going, and out of nowhere, total gut punch. I have a marble-sized tumor in my head, and I was shocked. I can't even express the shock. I was like, and I'm a registered nurse by education, trade, and work, in addition to a coach. And I remember like it was just a moment ago, the doctor and the nurse in the ER saying to me, like, I'm sorry. And it just hit me. Honestly, I was going, as I was driving to the ER, I just thought they'd say, hey, stop working so hard, or, you're doing too much. And it was just life-changing. And my life just changed from that moment on. I was just like, oh my God. Tears kind of came down my face. My girlfriend was like, hey, you all right? I said, no, you want to come down here? And they admitted me. And it taught me so much. It was, it still is an experience for sure that I'll never forget. They admitted me to the hospital, and they did some tests, checked me upside down each and every other way. Thank God I know the healthcare system. And I was just like, I was speaking to a neurosurgeon in a small hospital, but I decided to go to a large hospital, which he saw me in 3 days. And he told me, he goes, Todd, I don't know what this is, but it's got to come out. And 2 weeks later, I had brain surgery. I spent a day in the hospital, which I was shocked. And I recovered, learned so much. And with that knowledge and with my experience and things I went through, I just, prior to this, I was always in the personal development, learning new things, just trying to be the best version of myself. But this just changed. And so I wanted to share my story on a podcast, but more importantly, I wanted to share a lot of what I've learned, people that I've met, allay a lot of confusion in certain areas. And I named it survival mode because one of the things that occurred to me was that I was living my life in survival mode. I ate really well. I was physically active. But the big piece that I started to look at, and, people and things kind of just came to me, was the stress mind-body connection, in addition to, definitely the diet, eating, nutrition. And there's just so much confusion around everything. And I just wanted to share what I've learned, this is purely educational. I am not a physician. You should always talk to your physician. And I do, I understand a lot about, the healthcare system, working it, things that I really listened to my physician about, and things that I sought some alternative and just complementary, not alternative, but complementary to help. But the biggest thing that was really prominent with me, and I started to research this because I listened to a lot of different podcasts, and I'll give a lot of credit to them. Is I listened to this gentleman. He was a Navy SEAL. His name was Michael Day, and he wrote this book called Perfectly Wounded, and he talked about the trauma, about trauma a lot, and it got me thinking. And he not only did he experience trauma and being shot, I think it was like 27 times, survived being a Navy SEAL and all that, but he had this trauma, uh, and he shares it openly. So I'm not, about being abused by his dad, like horrifically. And you hear his story in his book, Perfectly Wounded. You could listen to him on podcasts. He shares a lot. But it got me thinking about my own life. And, I'll share openly that, my childhood had a lot of trauma, a lot. And I didn't realize how much the trauma over my life really impacted me, not just mentally and emotionally, but it impacted my body. And to this day, and now I have an understanding, really started to learn about that. And so I just said, hey, I've lived my life in survival mode. One of the things I said to my girlfriend around this diagnosis is I said, my life's got to fundamentally change because I worked hard. I worked hard, uh, always being proactive, doing a whole bunch of things, but I started to see that the working hard was part of the trauma. Like I was constantly in go mode, my brain doing a lot of different things like that. So this podcast is, about trauma, about surviving, a really, traumatic experience. And now that I've learned a lot more, some subsequent traumatic experiences, and also brain health, body health, uh, all kinds of things, ADD, anxiety, depression, a whole bunch of things that just kind of put together here. And so hopefully, it's relatable, to you, to anybody who's listening. It's just, and I'm going to have some interviews because I've talked to a bunch of people who just have an incredible stories to share. And really about how moving on past trauma, understanding it, and really living the best life possible and living an awesome life, and really around things that matter most. One of the big things that I've learned, like, um, as soon as I was diagnosed, it was like things that I thought mattered didn't matter. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, money didn't matter. Of course, you need to survive and support yourself and all that. But there was nothing like $100,000 or $1 million would have given me at all. It was really like about my experiences and people and memories, and and I'll share stories along the way. But that's really what it was about. And it was also about helping people. Am I here? Am I doing God's work? But one of the things that I said to myself, and I just said it a little while ago, is my life has to fundamentally change. And one of the things that I found, like, so as soon as it's diagnosis, I was like, oh my God, I want to live through surgery. That was my first goal. All know my name, move my extremities, all of that. I didn't care what it was, even though the doctor said he didn't know what it was. It was, I went through a really interesting experience with that. And once I survived surgery and I was doing well, definitely challenges post op, steroids, a lot of mental, stuff around brain swelling and all that. But what I learned, 2 weeks later, they still didn't know what it was. And little shy, a little after 2 weeks, it was non-cancer, but it wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst. Tumor, and I have to be followed and watched, and my physician was like, the surgeon, amazing guy, was like, you're lucky, and by the grace of God, I'm here to share, and I have a lineup of people that have gone through some experiences and have learned to live life full out. But one of the things that I wanted to share about that, so I get through this immediate, hey, the trauma of it, the surgery, I'm healing, brain's healing, spot in my skull kind of feels weird. Um, and it was easy to go back to work, right? Like, I'm blessed to go back to work. But it was just, I went back and was back in this mode, and it was almost like a habit. And I call it like, and I don't have to kill myself. I don't have to do all this stuff at work, but I did. And I realized that I've lived my life in survival mode. And a lot of people in trauma, and also in this country, just kind of how we've habitually learned, live our lives in survival mode. And I work in healthcare. I've worked with all different ages, different areas, but more recently I've worked with the geriatric population. And one of the things they've taught me is, you know, numerous people have said to me, like, I've worked my whole life, I worked hard, I say this, and then this happens to me, or I have this disease and I'm not enjoying. And so it's about living that new life now. And a lot of people that have had diagnoses that are really, life threatening, that's what it is. It's about picking up the pieces and moving on and living like almost this second go around at life full out. And one of the things that I say to my friends and people around me and myself is, why wait? Live that life full out now. And because life is short. And one of the things for me is I didn't think about the fact that I'm going to die until it was put on me. And I think a lot of us, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but we just live our lives and not think of the fact that life is different. Life, we have to focus on living it, enjoying moments, living on purpose. And also a huge part of it is like being healthy to do that, like in the moment. And I think being, I've worked with a lot of people from nutrition and health and all that. And they'd said, I never realized how bad I felt until I felt this good. And I think there's this part that we miss, like, is a lot of these mental things that we're going through. If we clean up our nutrition, get our body functioning optimally, a lot of the anxiety and depression and all of some of these symptoms that we have that we attribute to mental, emotional illness, not to say we don't have it or we don't have those problems, but they can be lessened and sometimes even eliminated through diet and working, the proper activity and just taking care of ourselves. So episode 1, just kind of a little overview of my story, anything, health, brain health, trauma, survival, and, brain health could go any which way, and people are definitely interested. I'm interested in brain health, and I've listened to a lot of different podcasts, and hopefully I'll be able to share what I've learned in my own experience, my own study, and also by having some people on that would be that just share their story. And I think that is like huge. Living our lives, like, I never realized how I thought until I was faced with, my mortality, really my death. Like, because honestly, brain tumor, everyone, it's funny, do I have a brain tumor? Throughout our lives, do I have a brain tumor? It's like one of those things, and all of a sudden I get a brain tumor, and it's serious. And I was like, whew. And there's things I did to get through it. And one of the things is, I was in the military. I didn't do any time, in battle, because it was, when I served was before the wars, in between both Gulf Wars. But one of the things I do is I listen to soldiers and some of their podcasts too, because it's an interest of mine. And I told myself this: if these guys could, get shot up or step on this and do all the battlefield surgery on them, I could go through brain surgery in a great institution in my area under sterile conditions, and that was the thing I told myself to kind of get through. So anyway, just kind of a little background. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I thought I'd share this and look forward to creating some more episodes and sharing the journey. And feel free to comment, reach out. I'm at Todd Angelucci on Facebook, and I'll plug these up into YouTube as well. So have an awesome, awesome day.